GSM, is good to be here this evening. My name is Matt, and we are continuing our series called Even If. And tonight we're saying, even if I'm afraid. It's a series that's been about change, and sometimes change is thrust upon us, and sometimes change is something we choose. And tonight we're talking about when we choose, we decide to step forward into what God has for us next, even if we're afraid. So we're going to get to that, but before we do, we're going to take a few minutes, and we're going to just kind of do some baseline stuff on fear. Just talk about the nature of fear a little bit. It will help us understand it when we get to the lesson, the next piece. So I think we can all agree that fear is something that we're born with, right? That we are wired up with, and it's really, I guess, from that sense, it's from God, right? Because if we're walking in the woods and we see a grizzly bear, we're going to be afraid, and that fear there is to keep us safe, right? Because we're going to flee. Okay, so I think we can also agree there are times where we experience fear, we experience this panic, this fear, but we get to a point where we're like, wait a minute, why was I afraid of that? It seems like that would have been something that didn't merit my fear. So wouldn't it be great if we only got afraid of the stuff that really commanded us to be afraid? It really was scary. So here's a little test. This is just a practical thing to get us started, kind of a fun thing, because I want to show you a couple pictures that are pretty cool. So a little litmus test that you can kind of test your fear, okay? So when you're feeling that, identify what you're afraid of, and then ask these two questions. Is this present, and is this potent? Is this thing I'm afraid of, is it present, and is it potent? And I know it sounds a little ambiguous right now, but that's all right. I got a couple of pictures to show you. So we're going to put the first picture up. And this will help kind of illustrate what we're talking about here. So that, my friends, is the coolest cat in the world. That is Bart, and Bart and I are just chilling on the easy chair, probably watching a football game. Jody's probably off to bed, and I'll just flip him up like that and keep him on my lap and rub his belly for like an hour. So is Bart present there with me? Well, of course he is. He's right there in my lap, right? Is Bart potent? Do I have to be afraid of Bart? Does he put me at risk? No, Bart, he's totally chill. It's an awesome cat, right? Okay. Present, but not potent. So now let's look at picture number 2. Okay, it's Bart again, right? But is Bart potent in this picture? You bet he is, right? I mean, he would tear this little critter from limb from limb like in seconds, right? Bart is potent, but is Bart present? Bart's behind the glass. So this little guy, this little critter, this little chipmunk, he would play on the patio, and when he would see Bart, and Bart would start banging on the windows, and his tail would be slapping the floor, and his adrenaline was pumping, and the little guy would run away. But then he realized, Bart can't get to me. This cat is stuck behind this glass. And so he would come up and start teasing him like that. So just a little something to remember, practical thing, is it present, is it potent, does it really merit my fear, okay? So that's the first thing. But now we're going to talk about how fear steps into the spiritual realm. And it gets a little more serious, and it kind of gets a little bit more sinister too. So let's look at a Bible verse. This is out of 2 Timothy. We're going to have on the screen for you. This is Paul talking to young Timothy, and he says this. I'm going to read it for you. You've heard this one before. God does not give us a spirit of fear, but love, power, and a sound mind. God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So what does that tell us about fear? 2 things that we learn in that verse. Okay, fear can be a spirit, right? That's different than running from a grizzly bear, okay? What's the second thing? Where does it come from? Does it come from God? God doesn't give us the spirit if it doesn't come from God. So where does it come from? Well, it comes from the devil. Here's something else that it'd just be good to tuck away in your mind. Far as I know, far as we know, in the spiritual world, there's the good and there's the evil. There's God and there's the devil. That's it. There's no neutral parties out there floating around that we have to concern ourselves with. Okay, so a little bit more on just the enemy that we got here. The devil wants to use fear then, this spirit of fear. And I know that sounds terrifying, and I guess in a sense it really should because it's for real. But he wants to use it to keep us from doing the things that we probably ought to do when we intend to do, and to keep us from not doing the things that really we intend not to do, right on both sides of that. He uses fear to get after us. In fact, that's why Paul was actually writing Timothy, because he was worried that Timothy was going to give into fear as God was calling him forward. And he said, Timothy, don't give into the spirit of fear. Because beyond things like grizzly bears, we have a lot of fear that's in our world. Fear of harm, fear of failure, fear of being a disappointment. I actually struggle with that one. Feeling the fear of being left out. Fear of embarrassment, I know, is one that you guys will have to wrestle with. See, here's what I want you to see about fear, is that fear is really selfish. In a sense, that makes sense because, again, go back to the grizzly bear, self-protection, right? It's designed to protect ourselves. But we get into this spiritual world now, and the devil's trying to use it to keep us from stepping forward and the devil wants to derail us. I'll use that term because that's what we're talking about in Big Church. If you guys have been following that series, we're talking about derailed. So the devil's trying to derail us, get us off of God's track, and he's going to use this spirit of fear, this fear, to get after us. So here's what I want you to see about fear too. So it's selfish, it's self-centered, it causes us to look at ourselves. So I'm just going to kind of illustrate that with my posture. It causes us to look down and to make sure we're okay. It's kind of self-absorbing, right? And it kind of takes a defensive posture. Maybe it even backs up a little bit. That's what fear makes us do, right? In fact, maybe we're looking for a way out. We're looking for, do I have an exit? Can I get out of this because I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling intimidated, I'm feeling worried, and there just feels like things are pressing on me, and you guys know what that feels like. And that's where fear gets us. So how do we combat it? How do we overcome fear then? We're going to put a verse up from 1 John. And really, if you guys haven't seen this verse, this is one of those, this could be like a whoa spiritual moment here. So don't miss this. I hope we got this verse. If we don't, I'll just read it for you. I will read it for you. Therefore, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. Okay, that's true. Why is it true? Why does perfect love cast out fear? If fear is this, what is love? It is exactly the opposite, isn't it? Love is looking not down at myself, am I okay? Am I safe? Self-absorbed. It's looking out, saying, how's everybody else doing? See, love is this way. See, love is moving forward. Seniors, we said this Friday night, love is giving to meet the needs of others. It's a great definition of love. How can I serve you? How can I help you? What do you need? Let me help, okay? So as we get into this posture, perfect love casts out fear. The fear goes with that. Is that cool? Perfect love casts out fear. So we got to be in this posture. We got to be this way and looking up and looking where we can help before God can help us move and call us into whatever's next. And again, that's kind of what we're talking about is us stepping into what God has for us, into the kingdom work, into ministry, into our next step. So our story tonight is from the Old Testament. It's the children of Israel. And let me give you just a quick catch-up because this will be a familiar story. You've probably seen the movies. There was an animated movie. There's songs about it. So I'll do a quick catch-up and get us to the point where we're gonna catch the story for our point this evening. Children of Israel, 400 years slaves in Egypt. 400 years of captivity. 400 years of making bricks for the Egyptians. Our country's been around about 250 years. 400 years is a long time. And you guys remember what happens next, right? Burning bush. Moses, go talk to Pharaoh. Moses is like this, right? Like, there's got to be somebody better than me. God's like, no, you're my man. Let's go. Moses goes to Pharaoh. Then we get all the plagues, right? We get the flies and the frogs and the locusts, and we get the darkness, and we get the water turn to blood, and then we get Passover, right? The angel of death is going to pass over Egypt. And the firstborn of every Egyptian home First male in every Egyptian home is killed that night. A horrific night. A horrific night in Egypt. But those of God's people that put the blood on the doorpost, you remember that, the angel passed over, right? They still celebrate that today, Passover. Pharaoh has had enough. Tells the Israelites, go. And so they leave, and they head out of town, and then Pharaoh has a change of heart, summons up the army to go after him. You guys remember this story, right? Moses parting the Red Sea, the Israelites go through, the army tries to follow, the waters swallow them up, and now they're free and clear in the wilderness. Pretty remarkable, pretty awesome. Okay, so now, again, we're still catching up on the story. So now they travel from there, and if you know your geography a little bit, you got Egypt, and you got Israel, the promised land where they're being called to, just around the corner of the Mediterranean there. It's not very far. I don't know how long it takes them. Probably a couple of months. I don't know. It's a couple million people on foot, right? So it's going to take some time. But they kind of make the direct route there. They camp, and then they send 12 spies into the promised land. This is the land that God has intended for them right along. It's kind of a return to, that return to the Garden of Eden kind of idea. There's this imagery of the land flowing with milk and honey. It's what God has purposed for them. God's made them on purpose for this purpose, to take this land. And this is where we find ourselves. They send these 12 guys in, not for an afternoon. They're probably in there for several weeks, because they go to the various cities and they see all these things. They come back with a report, and that's where we pick up the story. They come back with a report. So Moses and the leaders sit down with these guys, and here's what they say. We're gonna read it in Numbers chapter 13. I think we'll have this one for you. We went to the land to which you sent us. It does flow with milk and honey. Again, this is just the imagery they're using for this amazing place. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. All the people we saw there are of great size. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So their report is, it's amazing. It's just how God described it. It's incredible. But the enemies, present, check. Potent, oh yeah. And they hesitated. They said, I don't think we can do this. So 10 of the 12 are like, whoop, they went right to here. Like, how are we getting out of this? Because we're not going that way. See, it was time to change. It was time for them to step forward. They weren't slaves anymore. They weren't intended to be wanderers. They were intended to take the land. And only Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, let's go. Yeah, they were scared too. But they had remembered what God had done. But the 10 of them, the 10 spies gave this report of, we can't do this. And you can kind of picture now, there's millions of, let's say, 2 or 3 million Israelites are encamped across the desert here. And there's little campfires and tents set up where, think about how fast the gossip and the spirit of fear would kind of through that camp, right? Did you hear what happened? Did you hear how big they said those guys were 10 feet tall. Did you hear how high the walls were? What do we got to fight with? We're not warriors. We've never fought anybody. And they almost revolted. They were like, we are not going. So the devil is able to use the spirit of fear. There's a hesitation, and the devil gets an opportunity to use the spirit of fear to keep them from stepping forward into what God had for them, into what was next, into what was promised, into what was going to be amazing. Even after all of these things they had just seen God do for them, right? That's crazy. Here's what's more crazy. Think about this, guys. They were scared. They turned around, and they walked back into the wilderness, right? They camped, right? What were they going to eat the next morning? What was going to be breakfast the next morning? Somebody tell me. Somebody tell me what was for breakfast the next morning in the wilderness. Tell me. How did they eat? Anyone? God provided food for them all the time they were in the wilderness, right? Manna from heaven, right? So every morning they got up and they could just gather up breakfast and they could serve it up. Isn't this weird? God does all this miracle stuff, brings us to the promised land. They're like, oh, no, we're out. And then in the morning, they're like, well, surely God's given us breakfast, right? That's what God does. It's a miracle, right? Isn't that ironic? Isn't that weird? But this is what happens when fear gets a hold of us. At that point of hesitation, we're like, oh, God's calling me into something. Oh, I don't know. And then it's like, we forget so quickly, right? See, in this way, human nature isn't changed much in 4,000 years. We haven't changed all that much. Do we remember what God's done? Do we recall the ways that God's met our needs? And are we just aware of the provision in our life now? We think about the way the United States of America has been protected the last 250 years. We've faced so little relative to the world. Even in my lifetime, I've seen some really crazy stuff in the world. We're seeing some crazy stuff in the world right now. Think about how he's blessed Granger Community Church. Look at where we're sitting. Look around. Look how we have each other. Look how we have the opportunity to open up our Bibles and to share. Pastor Ted likes to say, fear and faith are at war in your soul. The one you focus on is going to win. So that's where we find ourselves. The devil is still using fear to get us to stop, to hesitate, and to step back. So why is it that even today now, why is it that we're not asked to go fight giants, but there still is, here's what's still real among God's people, that's us, is there still kind of a hesitancy, a reluctancy, I don't know, about stepping into actually doing something here at the church or going on a mission trip or being part of, God's big story. Like I'm I believe in Jesus, but there's this hesitation. And so I really was thinking about this. So I got three ideas of maybe why we hesitate. And again, maybe we'll have those on the screen. I probably messed these slide things up for these guys, so this is my fault if they're not up there. But the first one is this. I think part of the reasons we hesitate is that there's this sense of we're stepping into something, there we go. We step into something big, something that is grander than us. We realize this is God's big story he's telling, right? And we feel ill-equipped. We feel like this is more than we can handle. Do you ever have the sense like you look around and you're like, surely God's got somebody more spiritual than me to do whatever needs to be done around here, right? Like, there's probably somebody that's like reading their Bible more than me or praying more than me. There's probably somebody better equipped to step forward here than me. I think that's one of them, and I think that's kind of a shared thing. And the reason I'm going through these is I don't have answers for all these things, because at the end of the day, we're just going to say, hey, just step forward anyway. I just want you to know that they're common. I want you to know that you're not the only one that feels like, seems like everybody else has kind of got this God thing all figured out, and I don't know that I do, so I probably would be best if I just stay seated for the next 2 years. Okay, what's the second one? We put the second one up. We have a sense that this is going to cost something. It's going to require a commitment, personal sacrifice. It's going to require our time, energy, attention, maybe even some of our money. That's real. That's true, right? So there's a cost associated with it. What's the other thing it costs us, though? Because, again, it's kind of back to that first piece. It's like, okay, if I'm going to step up and be part of this now, if I'm going to help lead what's going on around here, well, man, I'm going to have to kind of get on my game spiritually, right? Like, I'm going to have to kind of get this going. I can't still be at cruise control at 42 miles an hour with the Lord if all of a sudden I'm stepping forward. And we know that's going to cost us a little bit. It isn't that good. But that's part of the reason maybe we hesitate. Okay, one more. Why do we hesitate? When God's calling us forward, why do we hold up? There's the weight of expectations that we're going to mess up. Right, again, it's like, if I'm working, I don't know, at Chick-fil-A, even at Jesus Chicken, if I mess up, well, we got some bad fries. It's going to be all right. But I don't want to mess up something in God's work, right? I'll say it like this. This is absolutely true. Tuesday afternoon, if I got some presentation I'm doing for work and I take some of my maybe customers and I take them through a little PowerPoint and everything and talk about our product and the meeting ends and then they leave and I go, how did I do? How did that go? And I'll be like, well, they didn't really respond to that slide and I probably should have said more about this. And man, I kind of got distracted over here and wandered with my words over here. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't really a great presentation. You know how long that'll bug me? I don't know, 6 minutes. And then I'm just on to the next email and the next thing, right? But if I get a chance to talk to you guys like I'm talking to you right now, and if tonight later when I'm reflecting on how it went and what I prepared to say and what I actually said, if they're kind of like different and I feel like I really stung tonight, guys, it'll bug me for a week. It might bug me for a month. I'm not kidding. Because you guys matter so much more than what I've got going on Tuesday afternoon. You just do. And what we do here on Sunday nights matters so much. The weight of that is real. What Granger Community Church represents, it matters. It's heaven, it's hell, it's forever. We carry that. And yes, the opportunity is for you to step into that. And just like Moses, we're going to think, surely there's somebody else. Surely there's somebody more spiritual. But we can't wait till we're not afraid. We can't just wait until we think we've got all the spiritual answers. So if I go lead a middle school group, I've got the answers for all the questions that come. We just got to go. I was talking to some of our staff before this started. And we were talking a little about, like, what are we going to talk about tonight? I was like, well, here's what we're going to talk about. And how do you guys feel about when you got the call into ministry? And how did that feel in that sense? And there was some of these same ideas floated. And maybe when you're in life group tonight, you can ask some of your leaders or some of the staff, like, how did you feel when you were thinking, God, do you want me to step into this and actually be part of this ministry? It's going to kind of make me like I don't know. So we're about done. What's God calling you to do? What is the step? What is the step even inside of the ministry of GSM that God's knocking on your heart and saying, okay, maybe you're a sophomore and it's time to say, I'm going to be an upperclassman next year and I want to step into some leadership here. Maybe it's leading a middle school group at their GSM before we get high school. Maybe it's going on a mission trip for the first time. I've seen God do amazing things with GSM students on mission trips. We got some here that are preparing to go to Spring Hill Camp this summer and be a counselor. That's a big step. That is like serious, good stuff. Maybe it's starting a prayer circle at your school at an intersection of two hallways every morning at the same time with just a handful of you and seeing what God will do. There used to be a GSM circle like that at Penn. I don't know if that still is going on or not, but that was pretty cool to hear at the time. So what is that for you? Here's what, I want you to ask that. I'll just ask you a question. If you believe, here's what we say around here a lot. We say you were created on purpose for a purpose, right? That you weren't by accident. It's not random. You were created on purpose, and God has a purpose for you. If you believe that, stand up right now. Just stand up where you're at if you believe that's true. You don't have to talk. I'm not going to give you a microphone. You're not going to come up front. Just stand up. Okay. All right. So here it is. If we believe that we are created on purpose for a purpose, at some point, friends, we have to step into that purpose on purpose. I'm going to say that one more time. If we believe we are created for a purpose, on purpose for a purpose, then at some point we have to step into that purpose on purpose. Israelites saw the giants. They saw the hurdles in front of them. They hesitated, and the devil got them. Made them afraid, and they ran. I don't know what the hurdle is that you see in front of you, but I'm telling you, God's got it. Be strong and courageous and step forward, because what we do here really, really matters. And this is your ministry. This is for you. This is you guys run this. What's going to happen here this summer and next year, you guys decide. Don't back up. Don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous. Keep standing. I'm going to pray for you, and then I'm going to sit down. We can all sit down. Lord, thank you for the opportunity for us to just see what's true, Lord, that you've created us to love. You've created us to take a posture where you can use what you've given us to step forward and change the world, Lord. And we are so grateful for GSM. We're so grateful for this building. We're so grateful for all that you provided. Lord, help us. Give these young hearts courage to step forward. Keep talking to them. Don't give up on them. Amen.